What's up, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Stand Up Talk. This is still Marnick Vandebroek, and again, I have a very special, and I'm super excited for this one. You can say, Marnick, you're always excited, but this one I'm really excited for. We have a very special guest. He can look into the future. He knows a lot about people. He knows a lot about the past, and I'm very honored and proud, and we'll dive into that in a second, to call him. How do I call? Do I say friend? Are we there yet? I know, but do know him for more than 10 years. I see him shaking his head. He says friend, so I'm in the friend zone, people. That's always good. That's always good. Yeah, he's going crazy. You already hear him. If you're watching on YouTube, you already see him. But today's guest is no one less than Herman Konings, to say it in English, Herman Konings. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Marnick. And you're at least a frolic. It's not a dog's food kind of thing, but a frolic is a friend and a same time. We're more or less in the same branch and the same kind of work in a way. And this year, I presume it's the 11th year that we know each other. We don't see each other a lot, but time to time we talk to each other or see each other, and it's always, of course, for me also, a very happy event when I see you and when I hear you.
That's really nice to hear. Why? Because they always say when you're talking about people that you connect with, it's not how much you see them, but it's how the interaction is when you. And I also have people that live on the other side of the world. I never see them, but when you see each other or talk to each other, it's like you have never been away.
Absolutely, kindred spirits in a way.
Yeah. I'm really learning.
So you're living in the place where I was born. Well, not born, but raised. I was born in Hasselt, but raised in Zonhoven, and you live in Zonhoven. So there is the spirit, that the Zonhoven spirit.
There you go. There you go. You never leave. It's the community.
Are you listening? Damn.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, Herman. Some people might know you, and I think definitely in Belgium, a lot of people are going to know you. We also have a lot of people listening in Spain for some reason. I also said that during the Lorene's podcast to the people in Spain. Welcome again to the podcast. You probably not know Herman Konings, but we will get to know them. But he's say it right, you're a trend watcher, future psychologist.
I'm a psychologist by education, and I've been studying. Well, I'm a theoretical, not a theatrical, but a theoretical. Well, I'm also a theatrical.
What I wanted to say, yeah.
Stand up means that you have to be a little bit theatrical in a way that you have to tell stories, but it's not storytelling in a way that I'm blooming the things, that I'm not telling the truth. Well, there is no truth, but it's another discussion. There is no truth. It's all perception in a way. But I'm trying to give information about what happens and what is changing in the world, and in the world of people and people's minds and people's behavior. This is what I do. I've been studying theoretical psychology in Leuven, the Catholic University of Leuven, and since 1990, I'm working professionally as a market researcher. But since 1998, I've been working on the changing behavior of people, and I'm a change psychologist. I'm not a consumer psychologist, or I'm not a consumer psychologist anymore. I think that it's more important to think in terms of behavior in general, being a consumer or being a citizen or being a patient or being someone. It's all interacting. As a consumer, you also are a citizen and maybe also a patient, or as a patient, you're also a consumer or a citizen or a person. And this is what I'm trying to figure out. How have we changed when we compare what we do today with what we did yesterday, and how will we evolve? How will we change into the future? And like you said, I'm not a crystal ball guy. Well, I look into
fortune teller. Everybody thinks trend watchers are fortune tellers.
Well, it's not true. I do look into crystal balls, but only when there is some gin and tonic inside.
There you go.
Friday afternoon, then crystal ball gives me very good ideas about the future. But I'm listening or reading what science people are saying. Science people in first instance, this psychologists, of course, my breed, a lot of sociologists and anthropologists and economists, marketeers, philosophers, not very important philosophers, historians, very important. These kind of people, but also engineers and technology people, you know, they are day in, day out, they are focusing on what is happening. They have to look into the future. You can't look into the future. It's always blur, you know, the future is always blur. But there are some signs that you can interpret. And these signs, maybe you have to look into the past to find the same kind of signs and know what may happen in the future. It's very complex to make predictions about the future. And I'm not a predictive kind of trend watcher. It's not about predictions, but about imagination in a way that you have to make yourself the view of what may happen. In Dutch, it's not about voorspellen, but about voorstellen, you know. Yeah. Imagine how things could happen and prepare for that. Make a drawing of what may happen with all the ingredients you have today. And a lot of people are asking other people, what will you do tomorrow? And I will ask that to you, but also to 9,999 other people. Perfectly distributed, stratified statistics, and then I'll know what people will do, because they said to me that they will go more on a vacation in 2022. But people are always underestimating the power of circumstances, you know?
That's a good one.
And what they say, truly, absolutely correct today, may be interfered by the circumstances tomorrow. And people are always changing. So statistics, perfect. Market research, don't ask people what they will do in the future. Yeah. You may be, they may be answering correctly, but they are not aware of the circumstances.
Yeah, look at
absolutely blur what they will do.
We just had Blue Monday. Look at the New Year's resolution. People say, I'm going to do this year. And then after a month, it's gone.
Absolutely. A beautiful example. The New Year's resolutions are also not only New Year's resolutions, but the post-pandemic resolutions. Resolutions, but resolutions, the post-pandemic resolutions. Well, in a way, you can say, I've experienced something during the quarantaine, you know, the lockdowns. I've experienced some things, and this is interesting for me. I didn't know that it would be so easy or so comfortable or so economic for me to do this. So I will stand to the new behavior. And this will work. I do truly believe that. But there are more things, of course, that can nudge your behavior. People are always very confident about what they will do in the future. Yeah. I underestimate the power of the surroundings.
That's a good one. Never underestimate the power of the surroundings. Yeah, I think that's we also had a podcast recently a bit with Sasha Sadri talking about setting goals, how people want to get their purpose in life and what they're going to do. And that's also a good one to add on that. Like, what are your circumstances? What are your surroundings? How is your environment changing? And will you be able to keep your goals or your future's ambitions, if it's a business or is it a consumer or is it a family member? Will you get there taking into account what's going around? Mm-hmm. And I think it's also, like you said, you're not a fortune teller and you don't just say this is gonna happen, but you do the prediction with all the information you have. And I think that's also, correct me if I'm wrong,
always limited. The information is always limited. There is more information than I can handle, or than we can handle, or than companies with 100,000 researchers looking into the future can handle. There is absolutely too much information. A lot of this information is also contradictory. So it's very difficult. So there is always my opinion about what may happen, and companies or individuals or organizations can look into what I'm saying, and hopefully they have a second opinion and a third opinion, and they can weigh the things and make decisions based on the predictions of people. Yeah. There is very, very thing you can say, but why should we listen to consumer psychologists or change psychologists if they are saying, I can't predict the future? It's money wasted. Well, there is a second option, to do nothing or to do something totally on coincidence. That is not a good idea. Use the figures, use the signs that you already have. It's a better option than doing nothing or doing blindfolded things.
Yeah, and that's what you see a lot. If I look at my previous jobs and companies I work for with Word consultant wise, often, not always, of course, everybody has good intentions, but often it's should we do this? Who knows? It might happen. Is this going to be a trend or just a hype? Maybe we should just stay here and do nothing as a business. But then the question is never raised, but how harmful is it to just do nothing? Because you might get it right and be ahead of the curve, but just sitting tight and not doing anything, well, yeah, it might feel safe. But, and even though they always go for, most of the time they go for the safe option. Just wait it out. Let's
And wait until someone takes the initiative.
Yeah.
This is, of course, the Gauss curve. You know, you can be an innovator, you can be the late majority or a laggard. You can wait, but sometimes it's interesting to take the first step. But to be very honest, I'm a psychologist, like told already. It's interesting to see how the personality of people also makes you do things in an innovative way or in a more careful, waiting manner, you know, wait until someone proves the right kind of behavior that will follow. It's also very DNA or personality related, and you have to take that into account. And I have to say to you, you know, me, and you've seen me also giving lectures or listening to what my ideas are. And I never used the most important statistic curve is the Gauss curve, you know, the standard, the normal distribution of behavior, or the normal distribution of physical features of people. You know, there is this, you know, the curve, the Gauss curve, the Napoleon hoodie hat. I'm going to show it to you. Or Google Gauss, Gauss.
We'll also put a link in the description. If you're like, I'm too lazy to look it up, just click the link.
Okay. Yeah. So, do you see something?
Yeah, I see it happening. So for the people you should now see Napoleon's hat.
There is no red frame like at Team. In Zoom, there is no red frame. So I'm not okay. This is the Gauss. It's like a pimple on your head.
Yeah.
Is a Gauss curve, and in the middle it is a distribution of values between the lowest value at the left side and the highest value on the right side. What kind of values? Well, the Gauss distribution gives a look at the population of people according to, for instance, their IQ or the length of their body, you know, and it is normally distributed. And if you know that, then you have statistics saying how many people have some kind of values. And you know the expression, he's a normal guy, or he is a typical regular guy. Well, the normal people, between brackets, are between -1 and +1 around the middle. And the middle is what is called the central tendency. And the central tendency is the average, you know, the average value. And we know that -1 and +1, within these two limits, you have 68% of the people, 4 out of 6 people in the middle, more or less, normal. The rest on the left side and the rest on the right side are extremes in a way. On the left side, you have 1 in 6, and on the right side, you have 1 in 6. And you see here that I've already signed on the left side the old trusted world, and on the other side, the new normal world. This is, you know, if you look at behavior of people, the typical behavior, the complex of all kinds of personality traits, all kinds of personality values, if you shake them, you get a normal distribution, the so-called Gauss distribution of behavior. And we know that most of the people are in the middle, saying, hey, after the pandemic, I'm going to take some new plans into the new normal, but also taking some old habits out of the old trusted world, and I'm going to mix them. They are staying between the old trusted world and the new normal. And if people are saying, this is why I'm showing you this curve, and also on the left side, the old trusted world, on the right side, the new normal world, we know that we know this is statistics. Statistics is also not predicting the future with certainty. It's also uncertainty. But you can expect that 1 in 6 people in Belgium, in Western Europe, in the rest of the world, will absolutely go back to the old trusted world once the lockdowns, the restrictions are out, and once the vaccines have worked for a total population. 1 in 60 will go back, run back to the old trusted world, but 1 in 6 will absolutely say a total new set of behaviors, attitudes, values, and I'm going to the next level of the new normal. But the rest, 4 out of 6 of the people, will stay more or less in the middle. And the middle is named also, it's a mixed zone, is also known as the next normal. You see this now working. On the left side, you have extroverted people. On the right side, introverted people. One of the most important psychological traits is the trait dimension of extroversion and introversion. And this is interesting to look into. The fact it's also distributed in a Gauss way, like the normal distribution. It starts with extreme extrovert, and it ends on the other side with extreme introvert. Now, in the middle, you have people with extrovert and introvert traits battling one another in a way. Most of the people, 4 out of 6, that's 68%, are a little bit more extroverted than introverted, or a little bit more introverted than extroverted. You can't see that at face value. If you are a little bit more extroverted than introverted, a little bit introverted than extroverted. But you can see at face value the typical introverted people, so more introverted on the right side, or the typical extroverted people, more extroverted on the left side. And the interesting thing is that a lot of psychologists are now thinking, we know that, let's say, 1 in 6 of a population, for instance, the Belgian population, or the Dutch, or the Spanish, or the French population, is very, very extroverted, loud shouting and singing and dancing, and wanting to go back to the festivals immediately, even without a vaccine.
The roaring 20s coming back.
Yeah, but also 1 in 6 is very introverted. They stayed at home, and they were saying, no, stay at home, please. Go back into your kot, like we said in Flanders. Go back. Don't do it. Stay introvert. Well, not stay introverted, because they are talking to the extroverted people who want to break out, to break free, like Freddie Mercury, to break free immediately. Introverted, 1 in 6, they stay at home, and they have learned a lot of things, and they will internalize what they've learned and take that into the new normal. But most of the people, 4 out of 6, will take some interesting things of what they've learned and take it with them in the next normal, but also are going to do some old stuff like they were used to do in the early days. Look at, for instance, working at home, telework. Telework, most of the people are saying, well, there are some good things about it, but also some bad things about it, because I miss my colleagues, I miss the social interaction, the physical social interaction, I miss the culture of the team, I miss the possibility to have brainstorms, or dream storms, you have to say, the dream storming of working together with other people, and you can't do this by means of digital distance. And so I want to have my colleagues around me to work on new things for my company. Most of the people in the middle are saying 1 day, 1.5 day maybe per week, I will stay at home. 3-4 days a week, I will go back to the office. But there's a minority of 1 in 6 saying, well, most of the time I will stay at home, rest at home. I'm staying at home to work. But also 1 in 6 are saying, oh, absolutely not. I won't be working from home any longer, because it is absolutely not interested for me. It's not for a typical extroverted people to stay at home and to have a digital distance kind of communication with my colleagues or with my clients. So this is statistics. And I think that statistics can give also, there are some biostatistics all around the world telling every day on talk shows and the journals what we may expect from the virus and the pandemic and the facts and the figures. Biostatistics are the heroes of today. Well, I do strongly believe that also psychological statistics or statisticians are becoming very important, because they can predict, between brackets, what may happen in the future by looking into the typical behavior of people and by knowing how many of these people are now in the society, in the community. So I think extroverted people going back into the old trusted world, 1 out of 6. Introverted people going absolutely into the new normal, 1 out of 6. The rest of us, 4 out of 6, having the next normal, taking the best out of the old stuff and the best out of the new stuff.
This is like, if you haven't seen the, let's call it the graph. If you haven't seen the graph, go check the YouTube. But I think also from the explanation, just if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, you get the insight out of it. And I think there's a lot in there. Not just to repeat what you said, but I think there's a lot in there. First of all, you say the 68%, so you're actually contradicting Oprah, who says that everybody is special. You just say 70% is average, which is, I think, very, very normal.
But you can be it's the average that makes you average. It's the average means that you have thousands of psychological and biological and physical traits that makes you a unique person. But if you mix them all together, well, then you are the average of all these complex traits and dispositions at the same time.
And it's also cool because if everybody's special, then you're just average. But I thought that was a funny one to see. Like, everybody's claiming like, oh, we're all so special, and then you have 70%. But I know that's not the main purpose of the graph. I think it's also very interesting to see that we talked about, your trend watcher, behavioral research, and then I think also if people read your book, Be Myself and I, it's one of, normally I work really hard in books and I mark things and I write, because I think it's so beautiful also with the pictures and where you went for dinner and the things you discovered. I didn't touch it with my pen.
It's wonderful.
When you talk about the whole trend watching, they go to different places around the world and they bring us special things like back in the day in the Middle Ages, like, ooh, this is going to be new. And now we're talking about a graph that looks like a Napoleon hat, and you're predicting what might happen. So that is also very remarkable. And the third thing in what you just said is, and that's more of an opinion or a question, if you look at the extroverted people that you say that will rush back to the old normal, you have the introverted people that will say, like, I'm going to go to my new normal and take, like you said, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing right now because I really like it. And the 70% is average. I don't want to dive into the political media thing, but is it now the extroverted versus the introverted that you see fighting in the media? Stay home, go out, and then the average people are actually the ones that are going to make the new normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And therefore people, it's not my expression. I don't know who said it for the first time. Someone, I think also a psychologist somewhere in a journal, in a newspaper in Holland, was talking about the next normal, because the new normal, he's right, there always will be a new normal. Always. It's even without a pandemic. Things aren't staying like they were. We always evolve. We have now 400 generations since the beginning of the civilization. And these civilization processes are absolutely going to higher levels. It's always going to the next level. Maybe it's a little bit higher than before. But there are always civilization processes. My next book will take this into account, the civilization processes. There's another word for what you're talking about are the so-called micro trends, like the gimmicks, the fads, maybe even some important trends or micro trends like TikTok. TikTok is the next Instagram, and Instagram is the next WhatsApp, and WhatsApp is the next Twitter, and Twitter was the next Facebook, etc., etc. But civilization processes are the so-called mega trends. A mega trend is known all around the world. You know, mega trends or civilization processes like sustainability, health, security, mobility, work culture, individualization, the ID shift, you know, gender shift, LGBTQIAPS+ shift, etc., etc. These are civilization processes, and the civilization processes are very slowly going under society, slowly changing that society. But what we have seen during the pandemic, since, let's say, March 2020, in the Western world, between brackets, the Western world, is that these civilization processes got a steroid therapy. You know, they got some boost, an exponential growth in a way.
Yeah.
The crisis has absolutely speeded up the civilization processes. And it's interesting to see, it's not a psychologist saying this, it's the historians are saying this. Historic scientists are saying always during and after a crisis, you see civilization processes going up. After the First World War in Europe, we saw the general adoption of the right to vote. You know, everyone could vote. Not only, everyone, even women. Not only the elite, but everyone. After the First World War. After the Second World War, we saw the enormous boost of the what is called symbolic consumption in Europe. Symbolic consumption. What does that mean, dear Herman? Well, symbolic consumption is consuming symbols like brands and logos and design and packaging and you know, communication, marketing, sales, human resources. Marketing, sales, human resources are not English names, but American names. After the Second World War, the Americans tried to, and they succeeded. They tried to reform Europe. Europe was, you know, farmers, the Wild West, the Wild East in a way. And the Americans said, well, we have a lot of money, the Marshall Plan, the Marshall money, we will give to Europe so they can rebuild the old continent into a more capitalistic state, like we in America now. But they get the money, but they also have to adopt marketing ideas and human resources ideas and sales ideas. And they have to also adopt our multinationals like Coca-Cola and Heinz and Colgate and Procter & Gamble, etc., etc. And since the 50s, we see indeed, since the baby boomers became more and more adult, you see the adoption of choices, you know, a lot of choices to make. Of marketing, etc., etc. So these kind of civilization processes always get a steroid therapy after a crisis, and this will also be the case. This is already being the case now. The new normal, also the next normal for a lot of people, are giving new insights, and these insights have changed the behavior of people. Of course, we may expect that more people will stay to e-commerce. I'm not convinced about a lot of what the digital transformation
word is out. Digital
saying it will even grow. I do think that there will be a setback, but it will be at a higher level than before, thanks, between brackets, to the pandemic. Health. Thanks to the way and is also globalization. Globalization is also a civilization process. But yeah, civilization process, but the consequence is that we had a pandemic. But also the result will be thanks to collaboration between continents and between countries and between international scientists. And what we see now is that a lot of progress was made by pharmacological companies and by scientists. And this will also speed up the process of conquering cancer, for instance. So there are a lot of positive things coming out of the pandemic. And this is interesting, of course, as from a psychological point of view, to look into.
Yeah, because like you said, you can focus on the micro trends, which is very comprehensible for a lot of people.
And funny. It's
funny and nice. And I can imagine also with us standing on stage, you talk, people want that the quick, entertaining, ooh, nice. But it's really about those mega shifts in civilization. And like you said, the most of the time people need to be set with their backs against the wall, as with a crisis, a war, or a virus, to actually change. Some people, if you talk about digital transformation, I also see now in a lot of virtual events that they say the World Health Organization was the biggest driver of transformation within companies in years. Where do you see it in general now? We're talking about those mega trends. Where do you see it going? Because if you look at the world right now, and I think also for people that are listening, due to what you see in the media, it's most of the time the same bad news, while there's so much good happening in the world right now. But it's hard to see this on social because it gets snowed under by all that stuff. How do you see the world going further in these, like, let's take, for example, one, you have the environment. We were coming closer and closer to, we do have to do something about the planet. But if you now look at COVID and how much waste there is and how much people are more concerned with getting the vaccine and getting healthy and protecting themselves, I think the waste bin of the world has increased. I could be wrong. I don't know. Could be wrong. So are we going in the wrong direction?
Masks in forests,
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You said the actual
a lot of boxes with plastic, the food boxes brought to us by delivery systems. But on the other hand, and this is interesting, this is a concern also of consumers, and there is more than that. If you take indeed sustainability, well, ESG, you have to say these days, environment, social, and governance. It's not sustainability is not longer only the environment, the natural environment, the planet. It's also about the planet with its inhabitants. And no, not 1 billion, but 7.7 billion these days. The sustainability, if you look at in the Western mindset, is becoming more important than before. We see that. Of course, some people are wasting their mouth mask, but most of us are more than ever considerate about the consequences of our behavior as consumers for the next generations. We see not only by a lot of research, you know what I think about research, but if people are saying I'm more concerned and the figures are more convincing than the figures on the same kind of questions a year ago, then you might say that in the mindset of people, and it starts always with the mindset, there is a more sustainable or ESG orientation, which is good news. And there is also, it's not about community thinking, it's also about very egocentric or egoistic thinking. The COVID pandemic made us clear that security and health, personal security and personal health, is very important, which is typical for people. People are trying to help themselves in first instance. You see that there is a shift. Health is another civilization process, but it's absolutely interconnected with the sustainability. What we saw is that there is a shift from, let's say, curative health into preventative health. More and more people are now into preventative health thinking, due to the fact that they've seen that on ICs in the Western world, in Italy, or in Luttig, in Liège, in Belgium, we've seen people dying in a horror kind of chambers, of rooms of IC, In our heads, for most people are not working in hospitals. Most people are thinking of an IC, of an intensive care unit in a hospital. There is where you have to recover after a surgery when you have an accident, when you had an accident whilst skiing, for instance. This is the idea of an IC. Very, very compact and sterile, etc., etc. But the horror we saw in the Western world made us also become more fearful about our own health. A lot, and even most of them, the baby boomers, even the 40+ people, were more and more concerned. What if I am also getting the COVID infection? I might end up in an IC, which is horror, which is the hell. So what I'm going to do is to take more notion of preventative health. I'm going to walk more, to bike more, to eat more plant-based food. And if you see the figures, and now we can say after a year, we can look into the factual figures of what happened in the industry in terms of plant-based food, for instance. We know by figures of Danone, more plant-based dairy products being sold without extra communication, without extra advertising. We know that the Impossible Burger and the Beyond Burger and the plant-based burgers of the vegetarian butcher, the vegetarische slager, and the vegetarian butcher in Holland and Belgium, food maker in Belgium, absolutely skyrocketing with their vegan or vegetarian or flexitarian food. Why is that? Because people are thinking, I have to take more notion into my mind about the consequences in longer term of eating more healthy, more conscious. And this is not only for them personally, but also they are now thinking, well, it's also good for nature. If I take more plants and less meat products, we see now an augmentation of 8 up to 10% in the western part of Europe of plant-based food, which is exponential growth thanks to COVID-19. But also people are now more aware of the consequences for nature. And the citizen people, the citizen people, sorry, the city people,
those people there, yeah.
The urban living people also know that they had the best smell ever in the city. They were not aware of the filth in the city, of pollution, of air pollution, of the air apocalypse coming down on them. Now they have they had more clean air. And the industry was low and there was less mobility, etc., etc. And they know what the importance is of sustainable action. And this is now happening. But it's not only in the mindset of the people. What is happening is a very complex and interesting thing. People are now more aware of the importance of nature, of ESG. The industry notices that by means of research or by what they read in papers, and they are saying, we have to take more into consciousness our ESG marketing. We have to make better products, less harmful packaging, etc., etc., because we see the mindset of the consumer changing. And before you know it, it's the industry nudging the sustainable behavior of the consumers. And last but not least, the governance. A lot of authorities are now saying, the consumer, which is my citizen, which is my which are the people also voting for me, are more than ever before into a green mindset. And I don't want them to vote on a green party. They have to vote on my traditional party. So we give more attention and more money for all kinds of ESG projects. Beautiful example, throughout Western Europe are the ministers, who are giving a lot of money for the national carriers of airplanes, the air plane societies. How is it called? Airplanes.
I don't know. Yeah.
The air traffic companies, like in Belgium, it's Brussels Airlines, which is a national carrier, and in Holland is KLM and Air France in France, it's at Lufthansa in Germany. They got billions of money to maintain the status of the national carrier, to survive. But the ministers donating the money also asked for a compensation. They've said, you don't have to give us a lot of extra money when you give the loan back. The interest is not interesting, but you have to make the commitment very clear that you will make your fleet more green in the future. And you have to sign it. You have to absolutely also act upon your commitment. This is what is happening in Belgium. They got only 250 million, between brackets only, euro for Brussels Airlines. But the minister who was responsible for that asked also, obliged, the company to invest more in more silenced airplanes and in researching on even electric planes for the future. And this is, of course, this interaction between these three dots, the dot of the consumer, the dot of the companies, the mercantile companies, and the dot of the governance, of the authorities, that makes, I think, also a more sustainable future more likely. But I'm not saying that everyone now is going into a sustainable future, because there's also the problem of the economics. I think there will be also an economic. I was thinking, when I see figures, and this is also statistics, for Belgium, we know that the average Belgian family has now 4,000, more or less, 4,500 euro more in their wallet than a year ago.
Okay.
Because they couldn't, well, they drove less, and the assurances were less, and they couldn't travel, and they couldn't go to theater or festivals, etc. So we've now at an average family on the level of an average family, we have now 4,500 euro more to spend. And you can say this absolutely, we will see this revenge spending after the pandemic, between brackets. But what is 4,500 euro? What is that? It's not for all the families the same. Believe me, it's like also new figures published, I think today or yesterday, showed us all around the world that now 30 up to 40% of the families have no more extra money than for the next 3 months to survive. And a lot of people also will be the casualties of the economic consequence of this pandemic. So a lot of people are not likely to spend the money. And then you have also to focus on the average person, but it's also a trick, you have to be careful. The average money, what does it mean? Oh, a lot of people will spend more. But average means also that a few families have now 100,000 euro extra in their wallet. And it's difficult, of course, to market that specific elite of people who became more and more wealthy or became more and more rich than a lot of people who have less to spend. There are more people having the concerns of surviving after the pandemic. We have also take that into account. I'm not talking as a sort of kind of liberal, progressive communist, but this is mere psychology and this is mere marketing in a way.
Yeah.
Don't try to. There was a beautiful expression by Joe Biden when he got in his inaugural address on Tuesday, Wednesday, the 20th of January, saying, well, we have to step into the shoes of other people. And this is what I think marketing should be more in the future. It's about looking through the eyes of not only your kindred spirits, but of the rest of the world, and even the rest of your own limited world, of your cohabitants in your city, and not only the ones in your direct neighborhood, in your street, but in other boroughs, with other kinds of people, with other kinds of concerns, with other kinds of financial possibilities. Try to understand everyone. And this is what I call 361 degree looking around. It's not 360 degrees looking around and asking everyone what should be, or what should be the case, or what I should do. But the one extra degree is looking into the mirror and really think about what may happen in the future, not only for yourself, but also for your relatives, your children, your grandchildren, etc., etc. So 361 degrees looking into the future is very important. And it's also making use of a very powerful ingredient of life, which is empathy. Joe Biden, these are paradox times, the oldest president ever, 81 years of age, if I'm not mistaken, has a slam poetry girl in front of him saying how the United States and the rest of the world should behave or should expect. And this is how it works. The oldest, nearly crippled president of the world, rather conservative, don't forget that, rather conservative, having a slam poet of 22 in front of him, saying what to do, what not to do. And this is how it works. This is what empathy is all about. You can do two things, or you can be very critical and cynical. It doesn't work. Cynicism
is a difficult word in itself.
Cynicism doesn't work. Maybe you can laugh and your partner can laugh.
Yeah, it's easy.
It doesn't work. So, and of course, it's better to say we are an empathetic company or organization or a government than doing nothing. So I think that empathy is absolutely an important thing, and also to be used by marketers and salesmen, etc., and human resources people, because you have to look into also the mindset of your internal clients, the co-workers in the company. So, but what is interesting to understand, I was talking to you about the civilization processes. One of them is the work shift, the work culture shift, and the knowledge culture shift. And today, and certainly in the future, marketing, sales, human resources have to be more aware of the fact that their end users, well, the end user, the client, the consumer, the co-worker, is more aware of how marketing and sales works than ever before. You see more people going to a higher education, having the possibility to travel around the world, not only by a plane or by a boat, but also by using technology. We have lifelong learning. We have more the democratization of education, etc., etc. And what we see now, and more among the youngsters, let's say Generation Z and the millennial generation, then 50 plus, who know how marketing works. Nowadays, in boardrooms, in marketing boardrooms, people are saying, hey, be aware that what you say to the consumer is not always accepted as the truth. They know how we work. That, you know, the expression, the trick of, well, the truc van de voor, the trick of the you know, is that a good expression?
I don't know if it's correct, you know, but I understand.
No,
it's just, yeah.
It's the you know, the guy at his market pitch selling you something that is not correct. It doesn't work anymore. More and more the youngsters are knowing what is going on in the mindset of companies, which is good news. Then this means that in the mid-long run, you can't use the traditional marketing stories any longer. You have to be more transparent, ethical, traceable, etc., etc. This is absolutely, I think, a thing that will stay among the population. That more and more people know the truth and can decide what is truthful and what is not truthful, and what is marketing and what is more authentic. I really do think that it, and not only I think that this will happen, I see when I talk to clients and listen to other companies, they are aware that the traditional marketing doesn't work anymore. Now people are saying there's a new kind of word coming up after authentic and purpose and empathy. It's now about resonance. Resonance, Resonanz in Germany. I'm talking about Germany because my colleagues of the Zukunftsinstitut in Germany have used that phrase, Resonanz, which is interesting. Resonance, in the last year, we were talking about resilience, you know, resilience, anti-fragility, you know, trying to stay awake and up in the stream, etc., etc., resilience. But now it's not only resilience, but resonance, also starting with RES, you know, resonance. And resonance is getting into the dialogue with people, with culture, with nature, with art, and having unfiltered emotions. And a typical example of the resonance, and resonance from a point of view of a psychologist, resonance is the starting point to have transformation of your behavior. I'm giving you an example. I'm working for a lot of travel and hospitality companies. Absolutely today, it's now Friday, the 22nd of January. I will give my conclusive permission to Toerisme Vlaanderen, the Tourist Board of Flanders, to use a rather extensive report I and Tourism Flanders have worked on. Joint work during more than a year, because the pandemic had made us to change some of the ideas in that trend report for tourism. So the report is now ready. It will be published somewhere in, I believe, February 2021, this year. And one of the examples of resonance is typical for the tourism and hospitality industry. And it's the mere observation that more and more people now, also from Belgium and the rest of Western Europe, are going to the Nordics to watch the Northern Light, you know, the Northern Light, this natural phenomenon that is very powerful in terms of instigating emotions. What is 4 times more Belgians went already in 2019, before the pandemic, to the Nordics to watch the Northern Light. compared to 2017, 2 years before that. And why is that? Because more and more people are saying going to a city overpopulated by tourists. There is this trend named over-tourism. 80% of all travelers abroad, their own country, so not taking into account the one from New York going to Miami, he stays within his country, but the few billion people every year going on a vacation abroad, of this 80% of people, these 80% of people are staying only in 20 regions in the world. So these regions are getting overpopulated by tourists. And then if you go to the Louvre to hopefully see the Mona Lisa, you get in the room of the Mona Lisa, and people are pushing you away to the next room, which is not a perfect condition to have the pure emotion of the Mona Lisa. A lot of people going to a concert of Billie Eilish are into tears, and at the best moment, everyone takes his smartphone and tries to capture that beautiful moment by using a smartphone. Well, believe me, it doesn't work that emotionally compared to looking into the eyes of Billie Eilish, looking into on the stage without digital support. And the same is also working for the Northern Light. If you are taking pictures of the Northern Light, you share these pictures, no one can have the same emotion felt originally by you without using that smartphone. Well, this interaction, unfiltered, is named resonance or resonance, And resonance is the starting point of transformation. And this is what Tourism Flanders, the Tourist Board of Flanders, also is saying. Going on a journey is also going on a journey to yourself and to make yourself a better person. Your experiences on a holiday, on a vacation, can transform yourself into becoming a better person. And this is now interesting to say. Resonance relations are becoming more important than the relation with goods or with products. It's having the resonance with a product or with a service that is making of you maybe a better person, making you also to think of the consequences of using the package of a product, making you of maybe making another option with less packaging or an alternative for using plant-based food instead of meat-based food, etc., etc. This is resonance marketing, and I truly believe that well, within a few years, maybe this is also a kind of marketing kind of trick.
But you never know.
But if you don't start with this kind of ideas, well, what do you do? And I think that working on resonance, making you transforming yourself to a better level, to a level of becoming a better person, or having the knowledge, the consciousness of what is happening further away from you, behind your desk, in your lovely house with your lovely friends and your lovely family, that there is more happening on this planet with 7.7 billion other people, and what the consequences of our behavior, of our consumption for the next generation, the generation of my children and my children's children, etc., etc., etc. I think this is
nice. Yeah, I think that's.
I sound like a priest in a way.
No, definitely not, because it's you got me this quiet. Not a lot of people get me this quiet, and I'm not this quiet because I didn't want to interrupt, because I was really listening for a lot of reasons. I think also the people listening to this episode, it's I think the besides all the things that you said that people can use for their business or how they look at the world or how they think the mega shifts are going to be in society and look at themselves like where am I on this curve? How am I experiencing all those things? I think the main overarching why I think it's so beautiful what you said in the last hour is hope. And this might sound a bit weird, but that's how I experience it. It's difficult times, but there will be more difficult times in the future. Look at the difficult times throughout history. They will always come. People will have something to deal with, war, pandemics, whatever. But it's the hope that we are now at a certain point where we are talking about empathy, we are talking about resonance, we are talking about connecting with ourselves, connecting with others, understanding the 361 degrees, like you say, not only understanding our little bubble, but also understanding not only consumers, but other people in your neighborhood. How are they living?
Yeah. It's also very important what you say about the 361 degrees in times of hoaxes and conspiracies, etc., etc. It's very important to take the stand of someone else, to look into throughout his or her eyes to see what is happening. Not only your own vision that is blocked by algorithms, for instance. Take the notion of totally childish wondering what is happening. Wow, and then use science. Use science. And science, and this is good news. Science is now democratized. It's not so. I was talking about the knowledge culture shift. It also means that what we see today, and it's very good news, that engineers in education, or psychologists in education, or biologists in education now are obliged to also look into other disciplines. In the early days, the engineer was making the future. Men were making female products. Nowadays, the engineers, I have worked a lot, I think 5 up to 10 years ago for Philips in Holland and Belgium. Philips in those days asked psychologists and sociologists and anthropologists to steer, to nudge, to steer the engineers in their company, because engineers were convinced of the working of the world through their eyes. I know I'm an engineer, I know how everything works, and I make an innovative product. Let's make things better was the expression. No, they now know that it is not enough, it's not sufficient to only look through their eyes, but also to look through the eyes of the consumer, of someone who doesn't understand the manual of a product. Because manuals of products, even now, are language invented and only to be understood by engineers. Thanks to psychologists and sociologists and anthropologists, now more and more engineers know that the world is larger than the bits and bytes and algorithms and structures and Excel sheets, etc., etc. And this way of multidisciplinary education makes that the ones who literally make the world better, you have scientists, and you need scientists and engineers to give the alternatives. You need a scientist to make, instead of a plastic box, a box made of weed, not the weed, cannabis, but
that would also be a good
weed, etc., etc. You need these people, but if you train them, if you steer them to also look through the eyes of children or people without knowledge, without the knowledge of how things work, older people, a lot of older people, they have to swim in this pool, in this puddle of technology, and they don't understand, they are afraid of that. So if you know that people are in need of some guidance, not by an engineer, by someone who's empathetic in using things, then you are on a higher level. This is this civilization process going further into the future, becoming even more interesting. And empathy is one of these things that can work to make this place a better world, not in the biblical or in the rom-com kind of expression, but also in the hard marketing, hard industry way of how things work. If you want to reach people, which is you have to reach people to sell stuff. Well, give yourself the position of that person, and this will work better, of course, for everyone.
Yeah, I think that should be like the main message, like better understand. And it's also good news for Natalie and me for Stand Up Company, because we work so much with board members and coaches, and most of the time the biggest focus point is, do you understand your audience? Is it 500 people? Is it 1 million people? Is it one person in a meeting? It's, can you put yourself in those shoes? And of course, also show them your world, so they're also able to understand where you are coming.
Yeah, the respect on that on that position, indeed, yeah. And be optimistic, which is my life law in a way. Yeah. This is also mere psychology and mere science. I know by a lot of studies that an optimist, like you and I, we are optimists, that optimists do live 7 years longer than pessimists.
Awesome.
So you should be stupid to become a pessimist. You lose 7 years of life expectancy.
That's
so statistics, you know, explaining statistics.
Wait, I think
die tomorrow, but most of the optimists live longer than most of the pessimists, and this is the way you should look into the world and into the future.
I think this is also the good one for the younger generation listening, because most of the time, also me, when I was back in my school days, statistics was like, you don't want to do statistics course, but you just made this in this last hour 20, you made statistics sexy again. So that's also a side collateral.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a joyful, a joyful playground. Statistics. It's a kind of a game, you know. Thanks to statistics, I don't use the lotto, or the lottery. At the same time, I know someone who won more than €1 million on the lotto.
There's always a chance,
There's always a chance, of course. And the optimist should say, well, let's play the lotto. Yeah. But you're saying statistics and facts and figures and bits and bytes and Excel sheets and likelihoods, and etc., etc. But look who's talking. Stand up means also standing up, means telling stories to be heard. A storyteller. You're a great storyteller. I've always reminded a catchphrase from one of my gurus. He died a few years ago. It's Watts Wacker, American futurist. I've seen in 1999, now more than 20 years, for the first time, a new kind of visual presentation, PowerPoint. Well, PowerPoint existed already, but he used not facts and figures and graphs and tables and Excel sheets, very complex on a screen and compact and high rotation, of the slides. It doesn't work. He used only one image and one sentence, a quote or a phrase or a newspeak name, And I didn't see that before. And he told me, well, Herman, he told me, a good storyteller tells a good story, but a great storyteller tells a story that helps you to find yourself in that story. It's a typical American phrase, I know, but he's right. This is telling the story that helps you to find yourself or your father or your son or daughter or your neighbor or your colleague in that story. And this makes, if something is recognizable, makes that you take that story into your memory, and that it absolutely remains there because it's a recognizable story. So a good storyteller tells a good story. A great storyteller tells a story that helps you to find to find yourself in that story. Works even better. And I know this is also for you the case. But it also helps me. And a lot of reactions by my clients or audiences of, how do you call it, are saying, oh, what you told me about generations, for instance, I recognize that. This is my son, or this is my neighbor. And that makes themselves indeed understanding what you're saying. And not the facts and the figures and the tables, which is complex and condition 2 and 3 and the 3-dimensional, even 4-dimensional. It's about understanding something by giving the right story. And saying this, I would like to end with my story and image. I've been telling you a lot about statistics, and I know this was maybe less complex than a real statistician should explain it. But on the other hand, I know also this is still too complex. Therefore, I'm going to share your screen again.
Right. You've been teasing me this image before.
Yeah. And you know, you've been showing me the book, We, Myself and AI, my latest book of 2018.
Yeah.
And I used an image. I used an image of Pieter Bruegel.
There you go.
That's the one. You know, there are people saying, wow, I'm into Disney. Well, I'm not into Disney. I'm into Bruegel, which is interesting because people are thinking, he's a trend watcher and he knows how to understand what may happen in the future and etc., etc. But still, I love the past. And I've been telling you when I was explaining statistics about the introverted and the extroverted people and what is happening post-pandemic. Well, post-pandemic, a lot of people are saying post-corona. I don't believe in post-corona because the virologists and the epidemiologists and the pandemiologists and the biostatisticians, difficult words, are saying all the time, be aware of the fact that this pandemic was already known in the past. We've always said there will be always a next pandemic or a large epidemic. You know, it doesn't have to take whole world, of course, into mind. But after this pandemic, there will be a next one, maybe within 20 years or 40 years, or maybe next year. And it may not be corona, or it may even not be a virus. It also may be a bacterial problem, a bacterial attack. So be aware that there will be new attacks by viruses or bacteria or whatever. So be aware the next pandemic will be there. So I'm now talking to myself and maybe to some other people about the intervirum, you know, that is the stage after the last pandemic and before the next pandemic. Like the interbellum, which is the stage in history after the First World War and before the Second World War. And when we look into the past, a lot of pandemics were there. The plague, you know, the plague in the medieval times, for instance. And I'm always attracted by the medieval times. And therefore, my love for Pieter Bruegel, the elder, he has he drew this picture in 1559 called The Battle Between Carnival and Lent, or Feast, you know. It's the time after Carnival during 40 days, not eating too much. Very Catholic theme, of course. And if you look at this beautiful painting, you see in the front of the painting two opposite groups. And if you look at the painting on the left side, you see the hedonistic people, you know, hedonism, seeking joy and pleasure, shouting all kinds of chants and songs and making music and laughing loud, the carnival people, also known as the hedonist people, but also known as extroverted people. And who are they fighting against? The introverted kind of people, the minimalists, the ones like here, this woman with a 1.5 meter kind of stick in front of her, saying, shouting, go back into your house, you extrovert people. You want to break out, but you have to stay in the lockdown position. And this is happening today. You see the battle between the extroverts wanting to break free and the introverted people wanting to get out. And you know, left side out of 6, right side 1 out of 6. And this is already drawn by Pieter Bruegel, the elder, 1559. And you know, Pieter Bruegel was also from Limburg, our home ground in Belgium. So what a visionary guy he was. And you see also this, and this is a beautiful example of the crisis today, which is a hedonist crisis. It started in Europe by hedonist events, you know, the après-ski bar in Ischel, where people were chanting "Highway to Hell," became a multi-spreading event. In Milano, you know, the European Champions League soccer game between Bergamo, Atalanta, and Valencia, 40,000 throats singing, cheer, 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 our team. It became a multi-spreading event. A lot of Belgians and Dutch people and German people were there skiing and got back to have the carnival season started. Were shouting, and the spreading of the virus came, of course, also in the Nordic part of Europe. So the pandemic, well, was a super spreading hedonist crisis. And then you see, of course, the introverted people saying you only can get out of the system staying at home and waiting and internalize what you've learned during the pandemic. So far, my love for Pieter Bruegel, the elder.
Cool. Nice. So actually, yeah, like you said, and then if they resonate with each other, show some empathy, understand each other, the 68% in the middle will take the best of both worlds, and that will be the new normal.
Absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
Come full circle. So my last question is, Gap the Mind will be the new book. Like we said, we, myself, and I showed it a couple of times. The book is still there. So go into that. It's a beautiful book.
Gap the Mind is only as from April, May this year. Gap the Mind means indeed looking into the effects, the impact of mind-blowing experiences like the pandemic on the minds, the behavior of people, and on society and companies, you know, mercantile companies, the market in a way.
Right.
And I'm going to write a lot about the civilization processes I was talking about.
Okay, cool. Looking forward to that. And if people want to connect with you, if people are like, I want to know more, I want to follow you, I want to see when the book is coming, I want to connect with you, where do they do that? Do they do that on Twitter? Do they?
Well, I have to be very honest with you. I'm on Twitter. It's at Soup Rosa.
I'll put it in the description.
Or on LinkedIn. I think it's Herman Konings on LinkedIn. But I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on other social media or microblog kind of media. It's my nature. And Twitter, I use 40 days a year, Twitter. And these are the 40 last days of the year. You can look into my history scheme on Twitter and on LinkedIn also for the last 40 days of the year. And you'll see every day a trend report from the rest of the world. Trend reports, some of them, most of them are free of charge, made by intelligent creative people, companies with beautiful predictions or imaginations of the future. And I do this every year. And you should look also. These are my colleagues, not my frolic, because you are a frolic. These are my colleagues, your competitors even. But what they do is remarkable and very good, in my opinion. And this is the only time that I use Twitter.
40 days of value every year. So
yeah.
you check that
and
out.
And my email address, herman@nxt.be. My website, NXT, N of Nathan, X like Generation X, and the T of Theo.be. Next, without the E. The E was too difficult to find, or too expensive maybe to pay for. nxt.be, and you'll find all the information also on that website.
All right. Very cool. If you're listening and you enjoyed this, we'll probably have Herman back on, because there's so much more to talk about. But I hope it gave you hope, what we heard, that you give a look in the future, that you can reflect on yourself, that you can resonate with yourself, because that's
resonate. Yeah.
And show some empathy, even though it's for your partner, your neighbor, or a random person on the street, and it will go a very long way. Be an optimist and you'll live 7 years longer. Herman, I'm going to let you go to your meeting.
Thank you. I envy your, absolutely, I'm not that good on that. It's absolutely a beautiful thing that you do. You can perfect summarize in a few words what I've said, and it's correct. Me and summarization, like you've noticed the last 1.5 hour, here and there you will be cutting, of course, things out of our conversation, but I'm not a good summarizer. You are perfect.
Thank you. That's how we all have our strengths, and if we bring it together,
the
future is bright. Thank you, everybody. This was a stand-up talk. See you next episode. Bye-bye.
Are you listening? Damn.